And here we are again for number 6 of 85 Federalist Papers. I'm so excited because I just got a few comments on the first 5 that I did that my explanations were super helpful for some people that were studying this in school, and that just put like a whole new fire under my feet. I am so excited. Like, if it's only you 3 that watch all 85 of these, I'm happy. Like, that made my life. So thank you so much for those really kind comments. So with that being said, we are gonna work on number 6 today. And number 6 is really interesting because with current times and with everything that's happening right now, you may have been hearing a lot about people suggesting a secession, or that some states secede from the Union, that the red states secede from the blue states. This Federalist paper deals with that specifically and what problems might arise from secession. So let's get started. Now, remember that the Federalist Papers, they are the best arguments in support of the United States Constitution. If you go ahead and watch my Federalist number 1 explained, I go into a little bit more detail on the background, why the Federalist Papers were written, what the context was, but basically they're just op-ed pieces that were published in the newspapers to try to convince people why they should ratify the brand new, newly written US Constitution, which, as we know, they finally did. And it really brings the best set of arguments to support the US Constitution. It's not just a matter of going through the facts, but you're actually understanding why it was set up the way that it is. This one is particularly fun. It was written in Hamilton style. There's a few phrases that he uses that I'm like, oh, throwing some shade. It's really interesting to kind of see what was happening in 1776. We might feel like today political tensions are super high and it's never been like that before. Trust me, politics has always made people emotional and passionate. All right, so Federalist number 6 was written by Alexander Hamilton. If you recall from the last videos, 3 people were Publius, which is the pen name under which these papers were written, and Alexander Hamilton wrote this particular essay. It was published in November 14th, 1787, and the title of the essay is Concerning Dangers from Dissension Between the States. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this essay is all about the dangers that arise if states were to secede from the Union. And like I said, Hamilton likes to throw a little bit of shade. He says, a man must be far gone in utopian speculations if he doesn't think that by the states disuniting that they won't immediately engage in violent and frequent contests. So we break up, there's gonna be war. And he goes on to cite the reason for that is that men are naturally aggressive, vindictive, and rapacious. Rapacious means aggressively greedy. I think that we've all experienced people like that, especially people in power. An argument that he makes in this particular essay feature a really interesting contrast between people who think that we should strive for this perfect society in which everybody behaves a certain way versus setting up a government in which we understand that people are going to be people and they're going to act the way that they act. And so he argues that this US Constitution, what this does is it encourages the behaviors that we like and it discourages the behaviors that we don't like, and that we have to understand that people are going to act the way that they're going to act, and the best way to create a government is to take that into account rather than trying to coerce people into behaving a certain way that they really aren't naturally inclined to. So there are an infinite number of reasons why countries go to war. The last couple of videos that I did on the Federalist Papers goes into a couple of those reasons. Those are very interesting. I think you should watch them. But it all comes down to human ambitions. Remember, governments aren't disembodied entities that exist outside of us. They are people. They are made up of people. So we have to understand that when governments are making decisions, these are people that are making decisions. And the reason that we make our decisions is it really all comes down to, in Hamilton's opinion, human ambition. The love of power or the desire of preeminence and dominion, the jealousy of power or the desire of equality and safety. These are all things that humans seek. And ultimately, they believe that men are willing to sacrifice public tranquility for personal gain, and they'll do so under the guise of public service service. He makes a lot of references to ancient Greece. You'll notice that if you're a history reader yourself, there are a lot of references to ancient Greece, and there's really good reason for that. Democracy was born in ancient Greece, and it was also a breeding ground for false promises and fraud. And we saw the rise of tyrants. Tyrants don't necessarily just tyrannize in the form of physical oppression. More often than not, what they do is they make big promises to garner support, and then once they gain that support, they use it to seize power by force. Once they have that power, the sole focus is to retain that power at all costs. So then at that point, his energy isn't directed into keeping these promises and fulfilling the promises that he made to all these people that have been helping him, but rather to continue to maintain his power. And they do that by driving out anyone who threatens to take that power away. But you still have to try to make those people happy that have been supporting you and really made it possible for you to gain power. So what they do is they have festivities, they hold festivals for whichever gods or idols are popular at that time, and that's how they trick people into continuing to support them despite the fact that they're not actually intending to uphold any of the promises that they make. We've seen many of these behaviors practiced in the rise of socialism in many countries, and I'll let you draw your own distinctions between current events today in the US as it relates to ancient Greece. And ultimately, it was the fallacies of these great men in ancient Greece that ultimately led to their downfall. An example given by Hamilton in this particular essay is Pericles, who attacked and destroyed an entire city of people in compliance with the resentment of a prostitute. This is the same man who also attacked another group of people because he had been accused of theft and of misappropriating funds by that state, and he might well have been guilty. But instead of having to pay the price for his crimes, he just attacked and killed a ton of people. He was also the one that led to the Peloponnesian War, which terminated in the ruin of the Athenian Commonwealth. But he says, despite all these history lessons that show us that these small nation states that are neighboring, that often get into fights with one another, that often find themselves in conflict, there are still to be found visionary or designing men, today we call them intellectuals, who stand ready to advocate the paradox of perpetual peace between states, though dismembered and alienated from each other. And I'd really like to break this statement down. There's a lot to read between the lines. First off is that beginning part where he talks about the visionary or designing men. These are the intellectuals. These are the people that don't necessarily do anything of value, but they do a lot of talking. They sound very smart. Perhaps they are very well accomplished in a particular field, and then they transmute that knowledge in that field into other fields like politics and government. And we believe them, we trust them because they're the smart ones. And it's usually these intellectuals and these visionaries that are supporting this paradoxical idea that there can be forever peace between states, even if they are dismembered and alienated from each other. And his choice of words there is very deliberate because he's suggesting that you can't just be neighboring nations that are in peace with one another at all times. And he gives some really good examples to prove why history has shown us that it's not possible. Some ancient Greece references that he gives us again are the Spartans, Athens, Rome, and Carthage. All of these were republics, yet they often engaged in wars with neighboring monarchies. And Carthage, which was a commercial republic much like ours, started the very war that ultimately destroyed it. The point being is that neighboring sovereign nations with similar commercial interests are not immune from war. Common commercial interests are not enough to ensure peace among states. Has not the spirit of commerce in many instances administered new incentives to the appetite, both for the one and for the other? So what he's saying here is not only is commercial interest not enough to keep peace, but it's oftentimes the catalyst for war and for conflict. Now remember, at this time, they're pushing for this US Constitution. It is not in place yet. It has not been ratified. What's currently in place at this time is the Articles of Confederation, which is very, very weak. That's why they wanted a whole new one. They just wanted to scrap it. And under these Articles of Confederations, we experience revolts in North Carolina, disturbances in Pennsylvania, insurrections and rebellions in Massachusetts. And the further you go back in history, and I'm talking tens of thousands of years, the smaller the tribes, the higher the rates of violence. He concludes by quoting a very famous French philosopher. I am not going to attempt to say his name, so I'll go ahead and put it on the screen here. And he doesn't actually name the philosopher in the paper. I had to do a little bit of research to find out who said it. But I think it's an important quote, and we will break it apart before we wrap up this video. Neighboring nations are naturally enemies of each other unless their common weakness forces them to league in a confederate republic and their constitution prevents the differences that neighborhood occasions, extinguishing that secret jealousy which disposes all states to aggrandize themselves at the expense of their neighbors. So really quick, let's just break this down. We already discussed at length in this video how neighboring nations are natural enemies. They naturally get into conflict with one another. But remember, we're the United States. Each state is supposed to have some level of sovereignty in their own. That's why we have a federal government and a state level government. So in order to create some cohesion, we need a confederate republic. Let's break down the words one by one. Definitions are very important. A confederate is an association of independent states. That's what we are. A republic is people and their elected representatives hold supreme power. So when we put this together, we're talking about a collection of independent states with whom the people and their elected representatives hold the supreme power. He argues that this confederate republic is the only thing that can prevent men from starting wars with neighboring states due to their natural inclinations, which we discussed right at the very beginning of this video. He wraps it all up, and Hamilton concludes by saying, "This passage at the same time points out the evil and suggests the remedy." I think this is really fun. Fun's not the right word. I think it's really applicable to today. I think that this Federalist paper, though not one of the famous ones that you hear a lot about, provides a really interesting perspective that we need to hear today. It was funny because when I had first written this outline, which was a few weeks ago before I finished my semester at college, I was wondering how applicable it would be to today because there wasn't a whole lot of talk of secession, but now all of a sudden I'm hearing about it a lot in the news and I'm like, okay, now I gotta push forward. I gotta keep making these videos. I gotta get through all 85. And then seeing those comments on my other videos, appreciating my explanations just really warms my heart, made me so excited. So I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Even if it's only like 5 of you, I will make videos for you 5 people for years to come, I promise you. Please like this video, it helps me out a lot. Subscribe to the channel, put a bell notification. I will be talking about more than just the Federalist Papers. I read a lot of different kinds of books. And also follow me on Instagram, which is Boring Book Club YT. I'll be posting more on there as well. I'm on Twitter, Boring Book Club. I don't really know what to post on Twitter yet because my personal Twitter is like all politics and I have to escape it sometimes. So let me know what kind of thoughts you'd like to see from me on Twitter, and I'm happy to start engaging with you guys over there as well. And until next time, I'll see you later, bye! Oh, one more thing. If you want to read these Federalist Papers yourself, I have 2 links down in the description. One, you can buy the book on Amazon. I have an Amazon affiliate link, so if you decide to buy it, I will get a small commission from that, so I'd greatly appreciate it. But if you don't want to buy it and you're fine reading it in digital form, I also put a link to the Library of Congress website. They have every single Federalist paper published in its entirety there, so you can always print those out one at a time. But I really like the copy that I got. I linked it on my description, so you can get the same one that I got. There's no index or anything, but it's a nice copy. Words are really tiny, so you might need glasses. I don't know, but thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.